Hello, friends. This is Dr. Borger, and today I'm going to share all my secrets with you on how I have built my med spa from a $40,000 initial investment that I self-funded into a brand that has made multiple millions of dollars. And I just hit a big sales goal yesterday. So definitely riding the high. Why am I doing this webinar? I am loving my life. I am living my dreams. I am very fortunate and blessed and grateful to be as successful as I am. And I'm getting a lot of DMs and messages and requests sort of saying, what's your success ratio? I'm sorry, not what's your success ratio? What's your recipe for success? How did you do this? How did you do that? And some of these questions are super broad, and I'm not going to type like 20 minutes of text because people are like, how did you grow your med spa so big? Well, that's a long answer. Then I also made a post recently in a group that said, ask me anything. And I got so many questions. And again, I answered the short ones, but there is so much excitement about this. There's so many questions I'm getting. There's so many DMs I'm getting. There's so many emails I'm getting. So I figured I will just talk about it once and then everybody can listen to it. So here it goes. This is unfiltered. This is unscripted. It's like you and I were sitting down in front of each other in a coffee shop. So I am an emergency medicine physician by training, and I completed emergency medicine residency. I completed a fellowship, and then I did private practice emergency medicine for several years. And that was full time. I did definitely consider dermatology as a specialty. And then what happens with so many of us, I did a rotation and it was super boring. Like it was medical dermatology, and the dermatologist I ended up shadowing, who was a super nice guy, but it was literally like rash prescription 60 times a day. And I was like, oh my God, I don't think I can do this. So I ended up doing emergency medicine. I love emergency medicine. I love doing a little bit of everything. But there was really always this desire and this interest. And then I got to do a cosmetic dermatology rotation, which I loved. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. This is what I want to do. Um, so that it was definitely in the back of my mind. I completed residency, I completed fellowship. I'm in practice several years. I don't even know how many, but I'm definitely in practice several years. And, once you're more than like 5 years out, your learning curve sort of drops off in clinical medicine, right? Like you learn so much in residency. Of course, you've learned so much in med school. And then I think in the first 5 years out in practice, especially in a field like emergency medicine, you learn just as much again. And then what happened was kind of the learning stopped, and I was wondering like what else is there? And emergency medicine is quite algorithmic in nature. And so I was missing the artsy side. I was missing the creative side. I was missing the right brain side. And I was missing the kind of connection with my patients that was more longitudinal and more like knowing them, knowing their families, knowing when they were going to get married. No, because especially when you work resuscitation shifts and all of that, you get to do really cool things and you get to save lives. But, there are people that you know very little about, and the sickest one will not remember me. So I definitely missed having more of a longitudinal relationship and connection with my patients. So because I'd always had that interest, I continuously kind of stayed abreast of the newest development, was looking into like things that were coming out, was listening to podcasts and so on and so forth. So I decided to get certified in aesthetics. Also, as a caveat, the town that am still living in, it's a medium-sized town. It's probably not economically that well off, really. And so there were definitely people doing Botox and injectables. There's way, way more now, right? But back then, there was definitely people doing it. And I had had one or two kind of very bad experiences where I had started getting Botox for the first time during fellowship. I was in my mid 30s during my fellowship. I had wanted at that time just to get Botox. And I think I got maybe one syringe of lip filler. So before I started in aesthetics, and I had gone to a couple local places, and every time, like, my eyebrows ended up wonky, or they would charge me for the touch-ups. It was just not what I was used to. So I was still driving actually an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours to the dermatologist that I had started getting my Botox at during fellowship. So, I definitely felt like there was a need in my town, that even though there was a lot of people doing it, I had yet to have an amazing like result. So I was like, oh, quality work needs to be done here. So that being said, this is how I started in aesthetics. It really started as a hobby business, a side gig. It wasn't really a big business at the time. So I got training with Dr. Lana Chuck in New York City. I was actually part of her first training class. She was a urologist that had transitioned into aesthetics when she kind of got forced out of her institution after she had, I think, a special needs kid. I'm not quite that sure about the exact details, but basically she was a urologist that got forced out of her urology position for personal reasons. And so she had started aesthetics, and she started some small group teaching for physicians only. I was part of her first cohort. And so I went to New York, I think 6 or 7 more times to train with her, again, because I wanted physician specific training. And at the time where I was, I didn't really have a mentor. The dermatologist that I had gone to, when I told her, she's like, oh yeah, you should totally do it. And then when I was like, well, can you mentor me how to start a med spa and this and that? She was like, well, like, I'm not the greatest person to shadow because I maybe do like 1 or 2 aesthetics patients a day, if that. I'm more on the derm side. That's what builds my practice, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't really help you. Um, so I really didn't have a local mentor, which I think most of us that started at that same time, which is, I think it was 2017. So that's like 8 years ago. Might have been 2016. They couldn't really find physician mentors, right? And at the time, there was still, which is still a little bit going on, where there was a little bit of a turf war between plastics and aesthetics, where a lot of the plastic surgeons were like, only plastic surgery or dermatology should inject. However, they're totally fine letting their nurses and nurse practitioners inject. While, I'm a physician, so I took training very seriously. Like I said, I told you in the beginning, I started with about $40,000. And really a lot of that money went towards flying to New York for 6 or 7 courses, because you have to pay for the courses, and then you have to pay for your injectables, and then you have to pay for your hotel and all of that stuff. And the rest of it went into things like a lawyer's fee to help me establish my PLC, and then buying my initial injection supplies, because as we all know, neurotoxins are expensive, and then you need supplies. So I started with about $40,000, self-funded. A lot of it went into training. The rest of it went into injection supplies, some legal things, and other supplies to start up. So that's how I started. And initially, like I said, it was a hobby business. I was doing it on friends and family. I was doing local Botox parties in the neighborhood or with people that I knew. I had people that I knew come to my house. And then I also sublet a small room out of a local hair salon that was trying to go a little bit more upscale into the spa population. But really, at that point in time, right, it was just me sort of injecting on the side, kind of getting very good at injecting because I trained so much. I took it seriously, but it wasn't that much of a business in the sense that, yes, it made a little bit of profit, but it wasn't anywhere close to replacing my income. I was still working full time. And as a big caveat, like I, at the time, was the primary breadwinner for my family, and I still had a boatload of loans. So, if you are in a position where you don't have to provide you for your family, where you have great savings, where you don't have loans, like I'm all for it. Like I want you to have every advantage to start a business, but that was really not my experience. So I had to earn money, provide for my family, pay off my loans, all of those things, because my husband was enlisted in the military while sort of also doing this on the side and growing the business. But initially, I wasn't really worried about growing the business. It was really just an outlet. It was a hobby. I got to hang out with other women. I got to make them feel beautiful. I got to do something that I really enjoyed. Like I didn't realize how much I really enjoyed the beauty, the artistic side, um, the procedures, like all of it. I really loved it. So it was just kind of a fun hobby side gig. Was I making a little money? Absolutely. But honestly, that money really went into more supplies. It went into covering my own procedures, and that was really it. So how did I go from that to the multi-million-dollar business that I have now? Well, it really started by putting myself in the right circles. So in 2020, I joined a physician coaching program, and I had gone through severe burnout also, and postpartum anxiety and depression with both my second and my third baby. And coaching really changed and saved my mindset and my life. I don't want to make too much of an aside, but like many of you, I was an overachiever. I really had deep, deep, deep self-image issues, just not feeling enough. I had not grown up in a household where I was ever told I love you or I was loved. So I'd never been told I love you. I sought validation in all the achievement, all the relationships, all the things. So coaching changed my life, and I've coached since. I'm a certified coach in multiple modalities. I'm also a subconscious healer, because subconscious healing and healing the enoughness wounds and the receiving wounds were really the step towards my next jump. But as part of that coaching program, there was also business coaching. And so I kind of got surrounded by people that were running like seven-figure businesses, physicians that were running seven-figure businesses, physicians that had sort of gone outside of that mold. And there was like a moment in time where I got coached and I realized like I didn't have a sales goal. I mean, yes, I was doing accounting, but basically just what came in, what went out, like, and I had no like growth plan. And it was like in that moment of time that I was like, damn, I love this business. Like, I actually love this business. I love doing this. I'm going to start running it like a freaking business. And so I joined another physician coaching community. I joined physician entrepreneur communities. And ever since then, I have done so much learning on all the ins and outs of entrepreneurship, on marketing. Before that, I had focused mainly on aesthetics and on little things like, I had built my first couple of websites. I knew what a POS system was. Like, I was smart enough to calculate, like, what my cost per procedure was and all of that stuff. But it was more like the business was just happening versus now I'm so strategic. I live from the vision into the now. So that's really what changed everything was for me, is to get into rooms with people that were successful entrepreneurs and really realizing that I too was an entrepreneur, right? There was this whole self-image shift from this, like, oh, I do this little bit of Botox on the side, to I'm a freaking entrepreneur and I have a successful business. Like that's what I was stepping into, because you know what? Even though I wasn't treating it, like at the time I was profitable, which a lot of people weren't. And I think some of that is also that I did have basic skills, like I had read up on accounting. I knew what my ROI was. I knew at least to, make sure that I had a certain profit margin per procedure, how to do basic accounting, things like that. So I had learned all those skills before, but then what really shifted it was the self-image. The self-image shifted into oh my God, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to run this like a real business. And for the first time, I set a sales goal. And because how do you know if you achieve something if you don't even have a goal? Like, right? That's the difference between just going out for a run. And there's nothing wrong with just going out for a run. But if you're training for a marathon, there's got to be a goal in terms of either miles or pace or both, right? To be that next level of success. I feel like every professional athlete or semi-professional athlete has training goals. So it's that same thing with the business. That is what changed for me. So, and yes, my market is oversaturated. Yes, I had student loans. I'm just going through the questions that I got. Since then, especially, everybody has opened a med spa. There's one popping up in the town I'm on. Like it sounds like every month. And yes, most of them are mid-levels. Most of them are nurse practitioners, nurse anesthetists, PAs. There's even one by somebody who I'm not sure what her credentials are, but you know what? Her boyfriend is a doctor, so good for her. So yes, right now it's super oversaturated, I think, anywhere, unless you're super lucky and you're a small town, I don't know, Kansas, Montana, I don't even know where that would still be, where your town doesn't have a med spa. Even in a medium-sized town with lower than average income, there is tons and tons of competition. Um, so yeah, so this is how I started. And then since I kind of started running it as a business, I have just, first of all, read or audible, listened to so many books on entrepreneurship, on marketing, on sales, on SEOs, on sales system, on standard operating procedures, on all of these things. And I love it. Like the big bottom line is that I actually am a creator as my archetype. And so that part of my personality where I feel most alive was actually being stifled in the ER. So when I do my archetype texting and in entrepreneurship, I'm a creator. I love creating things. So really pouring that creative energy into my business and its growth is what has allowed it to be as successful as it is now. So financing, I self-financed. And then what I did for like a long time is just whatever I was making, I was putting back in, putting back in, putting back in, putting back in, putting back in. And even now, like, yes, I get paid by my business. It's definitely profitable. I pay other people's salaries. I pay myself a wage because I'm an S corp now. And then I take some profit, but I also make sure that the business has everything it needs for growth and expansion through strategic business budgeting. Okay, what else? Training. I told you about training. How did I get to the point? Yeah, and then I went from subletting to renting my first office in 2019. I was renting at the time it was 1,000 square foot office that I loved, with 2 treatment rooms. I hired my first employee, which was really, really scary to sort of be, well, actually, I hired my first employee was somebody to help me answer the phones and schedule patients because I realized that I had more patients before that. Everybody would just text me. So my first hire was actually somebody to help me schedule patients. And then my second hire was an esthetician and I W-2 guaranteed her hours. And I'm actually super proud of that during COVID, even though we were closed, she got paid her full salary because we obviously had to close. And now it has really grown to, I have another doctor working for me. I have a PA, I have a nurse who both does my lasers and does injectables. And then I have an esthetician, and I now have like 2 back-end people full-time. as well as a part-time person that does all my phones and scheduling and a part-time project manager. So that's what, like 8 employees plus myself. And I'm super proud of the employer that I am because especially also in aesthetics, I have taken them on retreats. I'm interested in their growth because I have such a growth mindset. They're all super happy working there. I haven't had turnover. I had turnover a couple of years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago, with one esthetician that moved away due to her husband's job. And then I hired somebody else and I had to fire her within 6 weeks because she just wasn't a fit. And then I had a second esthetician for a while and I ended up firing her too because she was lying about her hours. So, but the team I have now, I have had all of them for, I think the latest one is 3 years. And the rest of them, no, that's not true. I hired a second back-end person, but that was an extra position I created. But everybody I have basically has been there for a while. And I'm really interested in their growth. I treat them really well. They get paid time off. They can take unpaid time off. This year I added retirement to their thing. So I'm really proud of the employer that I am. Um, I did move into my own building. So I was in the other space from 2019 to 2024, we outgrew that. And so into 2023, I started looking for a building and I found a historic abandoned building in our historic district. I bought it and I spent about 15 or so months completely gutting and renovating it. Now, believe me, that took all my money. So I did drain all of my stock accounts for that renovation because it was 360 out of pocket for just the reno alone. And so, but now I own my own commercial real estate. And obviously I'm a super good tenant. I pay my rent on time. I don't destroy the building. So again, kind of creating success for me, that was the next level of success, other than that we had outgrown our space and we were growing. The fact that I wanted to own my own real estate, that was sort of the next step, is from renting to owning, because now I'm my own landlord and I'm appreciating on a building and nobody will raise the rent also on my business by like 10% just randomly. So yeah, how did I get to this point? It's really, I think, a combination of, first of all, loving what you do. I love my business. I love our space. I love coming to work every day. I like most of my patients way more than my ER patients. And it's really about the patience because, whenever I'm chasing like a big goal like I did, I have to remind myself the money follows. So it's all about really caring about the patient in front of you, really delivering excellent service, really putting their benefit first, and then the money follows. It just is what it is, and then me, like I do so much mindset work. I do so much coaching work. I do continuous business coaching. I do continuous private coaching. Like I just try to get better and better all the time. Let me see. So I think the recipes for success lays in you. And also I picked it because I loved it and I grow it because I loved it, not because it's a way to grow rich fast. I think that's the other thing. A lot of people are like, oh, I just want to get out of the ER and I want to do something that will make me a lot of money. That's not the reason to start a business. The reason to start and grow a business is because you love the business. Because you know what? There's going to be times where you're not going to make money. There's going to be a lot of after hours you're going to put in. There's a lot of unpaid sweat equity. So until you love it, don't do it. Don't do it for the money because you know what? Money is only worth so much. And I don't think money would follow if you didn't invite it and play with it and like really serve. So, if you're going to do a side gig, if you're going to do a side business, do something you're going to love and that you're going to show up to do, even on the days where you have your 5 most annoying patients on the schedule, even on the months where you're going to make a loss, even when your like other injector just broke a $12,000 handpiece that you now have to pay for. Does that make sense? Because it's not all easy. I'm looking at it from the perspective of success, but I have had like sleepless nights about how I was going to survive and pay my bills. I have had gotten threatened to get sued because people are crazy, right? Thank God I've never had a truly bad outcome. But you know, even though people like you deal with a different kind of person and aesthetics, right? Like no matter how many times you say this is not going to give you the facelift results, and they're like, I know, but I'm not a surgical candidate. And you can document that 89 times. And then somebody's going to be like, well, I should have just gotten a facelift. I know you did all these procedures, but I'm not my money back. And you're like, no, because you got the procedures. There was an improvement. And we said from the beginning, it wasn't going to be a facelift, but they can frickin' haunt you. Anyway, and then of course, having employees, like I love my employees, but it also comes with its own challenges because now you're managing other people. Now you have to be responsible for other people. Now you have, you know, their salaries get paid way before mine gets paid if money is short. So first of all, that is the truth. And then, you know, sometimes there's two that don't get along, even in a great team, or somebody pissed somebody off, or somebody didn't take out the trash, and now the next person is like, what? And so like, you know, or they want more money, or they show up late to work, or, you know, they did this, that, and the other. So employees, I love my employees, but I think for most businesses that are somewhere between 100,000 and 1 million a year, employees are their biggest issue. Let's see. I talked to you about finance. Collaborating plastics was another question I got. Do I have a collaborating plastics? Now, I don't have a formal agreement with a plastic surgeon. That being said, I have a favorite plastic surgeon in my town. He's amazing. And him and I have a very good relationship. So I do send him a ton of patients, especially as we've established a very successful weight loss program. And I don't believe in body sculpting, especially for great weight loss. I mean, to be honest, you're just going to need that tummy tuck, like nothing. So I don't even sell it because it's just, I feel like out of my own integrity, it just won't do the same. So, you know, I send him a ton of patients and we have a great relationship. So I have not had to call him in. And I am pretty certain, though, that if I had a bad enough complication that needed plastics, that needed debridement, him and I have such a good relationship. And he, you know, even admits, honestly, like he is an amazing plastic surgeon and he does a lot of breast reconstruction surgery. He does, obviously, now with all the weight loss, a lot of mommy makeovers and tummy tucks. He does facelift and all of those things. But he himself says, like, you know more about filler and non-surgical aesthetics than I do because you do it all day long and that's all you train in. You learn all the newest development. You learn all of the things. Like he's like, I do a little bit of it if somebody asks me, but really, mainly, I do surgery. So, you know, we have a great relationship. It's not a formal collaboration. I have not yet needed him whatever you need, you know, knock on wood if that was knock wood. But I am for sure that because we have a great collaborating relationship, that if I had to call him in and I needed something, that he would absolutely help me, sort of also because it's a good referral relationship. What else? Oh, the question that I got the most was a variety of how do you get new clients? How do you get new customers? How do you do all of that? So, you know, at this point in time, I do very little paid marketing. You know, what I kind of believe in is the orbit theory, right? Is that I just bring as many people as possible into my circulating orbit. You know, we had done some paid marketing in the past and we didn't honestly see the return on investment. It was everything, all of these companies with all their stuff brought out was like very generic or not good leads or, you know, like it just we didn't see the ROI on Google Ads and any of those things. So what I focus on now is really, first of all, my biggest source has always been word of mouth and referrals. So, my retention in my clinic is amazing. Unfortunately, I live in a military town. And so the only people that really stop coming to me, I mean, of course, there's always one or the other, but generally it's because they get military stationed anywhere else. But number one, I focus versus on client acquisition, on client retention. And our client retention rates are something that most businesses would just dream of. So number one is because it's all about the client, a culture of belonging, excellence in what we do, a boutique feel where they're really at the center. First of all, our client retention rates are through the roof. So once you become my client, if you still live in the same in the same area, you are very likely to stay my client. So number one, retention is a huge focus of ours. Number two, obviously we work on SEO, we work on Instagram, because of course what I do is very visual. So, we get a lot of clients from social media. And then we have excellent Google reviews. We have 5-star Google reviews. So that alone means that a lot of people that don't come referred, when I ask them, how did you find us? They were saying, oh, I Googled med spa, or I Googled Botox, I Googled laser hair removal. And when I looked at your reviews, they were just out of this world amazing. So that's why I chose to come to you. And then, I have a podcast that's top 5% global. And I just started a blog. And so, when I say I need people orbiting, it's sort of like I try to pull them into my orbit. You might be in my orbit, you might have listened to my podcast, you might have seen something on social media, you might have seen me pop up in a group. And so once you're in my orbit, there's a lot of ways that I sort of believe in this orbit theory that instead of having a clear funnel, you just kind of orbit, and then at some point you get attracted in. So I really think about the attraction orbit, right? That because I keep showing up and I keep being in all these places and I keep putting out content and I lecture internationally and I host the podcast and I get asked to guest speak all the time, that at some point this orbit, right? The like pull will pull you in, and when you need somebody, you're going to come to me. So that's really my main way that I get new clients. So let me just answer like one more question that I have not kind of answered. And I think it's a good question to close this webinar. Again, if there's more questions, like send them to me and I will do this again. And that is like, what would I recommend to anybody starting or wanting to transition out of their career? And it's always like to run towards something and not to run away, right? Because I think if all you're trying to do is run away, you're going to end up in a situation that might not be ideal. It's fine to want to get away from something, but then run towards a vision, a goal, and like something ideally that lights you up. Don't start a business because you think it's a get rich quick plan or a, I don't ever have to work again. Yes, I'm in a position now that I've grown my business that the year is optional for me. I do it as my fun job. The year is my side gig. And I've rediscovered a new love from the year after going through burnout probably twice, like, right? But I'm doing it because I freaking love both of my businesses. I also have a business coaching, hosting luxury retreats, hosting deep healing retreats. And it's not just for entrepreneurship, it's also for time freedom, it's for life freedom, it's for time management. And I do IV ketamine as well, integrated with subconscious healing and healing. But the idea is that if you have a business that you truly love, and when I step into my building and I step into the energy of it, it's like incredible. And so, if you're going to decide what you're going to do next, like do a business that lights you up, because like I said, it's a lot of work. I think about it all the time. I dream about it all the time. I get texts about it 7 days a week, whether it's from staff members, whether it's from patients, whether it's from reps, whether it's from everything. I mean, I have very good boundaries on this of it, like this is a non-emergent text, like not going to answer it. But as a business owner, like there is this joke of I traded my 9 to 5 for a 24/7. So that is definitely true. So do a business that lights you up and that you love in a way that you love, because I think that is the most amazing thing about entrepreneurship is that you get to create. And as I said, I'm a creator. My archetype is a creator. So I created a business that I'm absolutely in love with. I actually created multiple businesses that I'm absolutely in love with. So rather than following somebody else's path, like create the business that you're in love with, because that is what will sustain you. There's going to be this beautiful relationship because every business has a soul. And then my second recommendation would really be to get mentoring and coaching. And yes, full disclaimer, not only do I do retreats for women's empowerment, I do deep healing retreats, I do a lot of business coaching. And I mean, of course, because I'm successful, right? But then I also have multiple coaching certifications and leverage. If somebody hires me to help them build or scale or get to the next level or solve a problem in your business, it's not money wasted. It's you're leveraging my mistakes, you're leveraging my experience, you're leveraging all the hundreds and thousands of hours that I've worked in this business to grow it, that I've studied, the multiple hundred thousands of dollars that I've paid my own coaches. So I think that will be my biggest recommendation if you want to grow or scale, like leverage to experience. I wish I would have had a mentor. As I said, back then I really didn't. Um, but since I found coaches, since I found coaching, I have a business coach and I pay her $50,000 a year. And I'm actually paying more for someone on one time in person with her, but it's so worth it because that's what's going to help me get from where I'm now to the next step, the next frequency, because she's there, right? So pick somebody who has something that you want. Again, not everybody who has gotten there is also a good coach. Make sure it's a match and then leverage their tools to kind of fast track your success. Yeah, that would really be my advice. That is my webinar. That is my kind of telling you my story on how I grew my business from an initial small investment, no business experience. So that's the other thing. I was never an entrepreneur. Like I did not grow up with entrepreneur parents. I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even think it was a possibility for me to be an entrepreneur, right? So I think that was the first thing, was just realizing that other than doing a Botox side gig, I could be a successful entrepreneur. So again, this is my story on how I went from a small initial investment to having a brand that has produced multiple millions of dollars. And it's all behind the scenes for you. If you have more questions, if you want to reach out, my Instagram is at Dr. Borger. That's doctor spelled out, and then Borger. My coaching and courses website is www.theaestheticdoctor.com. That's trademark, The Aesthetic Doctor. And then I have a podcast where I talk about aesthetic medicine as well as life coaching, wellness, how to live your best life on your own terms. That's called the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. And yeah, let's get into each other's orbits and good luck with everything that you do. Bye.